On today's Zoom, we have with us John Thornburg, who is president of Malden Catholic. Welcome, John. Thanks for some time with us.
Oh, no problem, Patrick. Glad to be here.
So I've asked John to talk a little bit about the goal setting that he does for each academic year, and we're going to pop up on the screen some samples of that. And then also more recently, a president's dashboard that John uses with his board of directors. So with that, let me pop up on the screen. John, you have in the past, set some goals for yourself that obviously introduced to the board. So just talk a little bit about the genesis of these goals each year. How do you come about creating these goals? What's your interaction with the board in terms of goal setting? Let's start with there. I'll let you go ahead and comment.
Sure. So every summer, as I think about the next school year, probably even before then, I start thinking about goals for the next year. I think for me, Patrick, it's really important to have goals that are agreed upon with the board of directors. That way I know my marching orders and know what the priorities are. And so what I do is over the summer, I complete a draft and then I share it with my chairman of the board, and then he reviews them. And then usually we'll meet for dinner or lunch and actually spend a couple hours going over each of the areas, talking through them. The previous year, what we're looking for the next year. I'll have numerous revisions. I'll come back, revise them, and then sit down with the staff in each area so they understand what my goals are for them related to myself being held accountable by our board. And then that'll come out and I'll send it back to the board chair and he'll give it one more review and I will. And then there you have it. I have my goals, and they include a variety of areas. Some areas are from my own observations. Some areas are your typical areas that any head of school has around enrollment, advancement, and finance. And that's where we go. It really provides during the year, and I try to keep them on the wall next to my desk, an anchor point as we move forward. And then every board meeting, my comments that I provide the board usually are an update on these goals, the progress we're making, where we were a year ago on this date, projected numbers, any challenges along the way. So by the time I get to our last board meeting, it's not a surprise to the board how I've been doing, the progress I've been making. They have a pretty good idea and are involved. And the board's responsibility, making sure that I stay are held accountable to the strategic direction of the school. In the end, Patrick, the formation of the goals I really feel strongly, and mine can be pretty specific in some areas, are really so the board can do its job and I can do my job and we're all on the same page together.
Excellent. And I was going to ask about accountability from the board's perspective, but you answered that in terms of just, having these frequent and regular updates to them so they see the progress being made.
Right. And then at the last board meeting, usually I'll supply a report card, I'll call it. This year, we decided to move it to July because some of the advancement goals, aren't realized until the end of our fiscal year. And so I'm planning, a report card to the board chair in July that kind of wraps everything together. But it kind of is the final stamp of measurement of how well I did on the goals. And then it sets up the next set of goals for the next year.
Great. One of the things I appreciate, John, with your goals as well is a great number of them. They're measurable, they're quantifiable. Can you talk a little bit about just the importance of, and not that every goal has to be quantifiable. Some will be more qualitative in nature, particularly coming out of COVID. One could say, a president's or headmaster's responsibilities are to navigate the school community effectively through COVID. Well, that's a little harder to measure, but a lot of these are quite measurable. Can you just speak to the importance of that fact in setting goals?
Yeah, right. So for me, it's really important to have measurable goals. I know sometimes it's difficult in education to always grab onto those. Obviously in advancement, enrollment, and finance, it's a little easier, but in all the areas, I want to be able to say, this is the progress I made towards a specific point. Just having, let's improve faculty retention and leave it at that leaves a lot of room for interpretation. And so I really like to say, okay, here's what the network does. This is our goal for this next year. And to be honest with you, I don't know if we'll hit our goal this year, but that's something then that can be discussed and why. And the measurable goals help us to identify places where we need to have further discussion and strategically think about the school. Everybody, I think, understands that if you don't have a measurable goal, it can be tough to decide. I might think I did a great job, and whereas I might not have. So I always try to put something measurable there. And I should say too, there's a lot of goals here. I don't achieve them all, okay? And there's, you look at some areas and during the year, we just have a discussion and say, we just don't have time for that this year. Let's do it next year. So, I want anybody who reviews this to understand this is not a black and white list. This is something that kind of sets the mark of where we're going to head at the beginning of the fiscal year and beginning of the school year, and then guides us through the process.
Great. Thank you. Let's pivot a little bit and talk about the president's dashboard. I'm going to pop that up on the screen here, but as I'm doing that, maybe you can get us started. Just talk about the genesis of that idea and how you use it with your board.
Sure. So many boards are probably like ours. We have committee meetings ahead of time and reports are given, and then all these materials come out to board members, and then they are responsible to read them. And then when you get to the board meeting, it's more about strategic discussion. Well, I was putting together these long comments and we had all these board reports, and I thought it'd be nice just to have a focal point that encapsulated things related to my goals, which are in the middle of this dashboard, along with some of the metrics, the measurements along the way. So, for example, excuse me, let me just take care of that. Along the way, our total giving is 2.39 million was the goal. And at the time of this board meeting in May, our goal was 2.25 million. We're at 2.39 and we're way ahead. And this really gave a snapshot to board members who studied all the materials or maybe didn't review them as closely to be able to see exactly where we were in some of the key areas. And my idea around this was I was meeting with folks for advancement, and I was doing a dashboard to be able to share, how well we're doing. And I thought, this might be helpful for the board. And so I put it together, and I had a really positive response from board members. So now I use this during my comments. I put this up at the beginning of the meeting, and we'll review this, and it kind of sets the tone. And it takes a little bit of pressure off committees too, because if I didn't share this, sometimes a staff member feels like they need to go through all this data. Well, here it all is in one place.
Great. And have you found that it creates, more strategic thinking from your board's perspective, or just different questions, given that they get to see data in perhaps a different way than they were used to?
Yeah, the questions they ask are very strategically driven because these areas are reflecting strategic areas. So, for example, student retention. We've lost more students than we did the year before. We have 5 less students. And right away, that's a question, why do you think that is? What can we do to support you? What do we need to understand? So yes, it leads them to be able to understand strategic areas and ask those really important questions.
Great. Well, John, I want to thank you for your time. Again, 2 quick topics there, but again, very important topics that I think for heads of schools to have direction in terms of where they're going and making sure that aligns to the board's expectations and vision as well, and that the head of school and the board has a shared vision. And certainly the dashboard is a great accountability measure, but also just a great tool and an instrument to keep board directors and heads of schools informed of the direction of school. So we appreciate you taking time to share with us today, John.
Oh, you're welcome, Patrick. Thank you.